Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Make It Happen in the Philippines launch. May I ask everyone to please settle down as we begin our program with the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, telos ng sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisikin, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bagaw, ay hinatang tulang awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawag mo'y tagumpay na naghihiling, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may maghihiling. Lumalang araw ng walhagit pagsinta, buhay ang langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng kartay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
In the Philippines launch. I am Pinky Webb, and I'm wearing my face shield. It's kind of hard to maneuver the mic. So for all our speakers, Isaac Mon, you have to place the mic underneath here. Otherwise, this is how it's going to sound. So that's just a tip. So again, I'm Pinky Webb, your host for today. Good morning, good afternoon, and of course, good evening to our virtual audience joining us from across the globe. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are pleased and honored to be joined here today by Secretary Ramon Lopez and Undersecretary Severino Rodolfo of the Department of Trade and Industry. We are also honored to be joined by Undersecretary Epimaco Densing III, Department of Interior and Local Government. We also have Undersecretary Marvin Gatpayat, Presidential Communications Operations Office. Also with us, Administrator and CEO. I haven't seen him in a while. Cagayan Economic Zone Authority says Secretary Raul Lambino. OIC President and CEO, Clark Development Corporation, Engineer Marisa Mandokdo. Chairman and Managing Head, Regional Board of Investments, Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, Attorney Ishak Mastura. We also have DTI Undersecretary and BOI Managing Head. Yes, I mentioned Dr. Severino Rodolfo. Director General of EPOFIL, Attorney Ruel Barba. Also with us, DTI Assistant Secretary Noel Patrick Prudente. BOI Governor Angelica M. Cayas. BOI Executive Director Attorney Bobby Fondevilla. BOI Executive Director Maria Corazon Halili Dichosa. Also with us this afternoon, Richard Coley, Director of Trade and Investment of the British Embassy, Manila. Also with us, Elmer Luder, President and CEO, Lufthansa Technique Philippines. John Lee, Chairman, Aerospace Industries Association of the Philippines. And Vicente Mills Jr., President, Federation of Industries of the Philippines. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We would also like to acknowledge the presence of our initiative partners, both in the government and private sectors, and our dear supporters from the media for attending online to witness this very special event. Today marks another milestone for the Philippine government amid the challenging situation we are all in. This launch is about having the first ever unified, multi-sector, and multi-market international investment promotion campaign by the Philippine Board of Investments in partnership with the investments promotion agencies, Philippines Trade and Investment Centers Abroad, and members of the economic cluster to bring greater foreign direct investments into our country. The campaign focuses on key industries with the most potential for foreign investment. These are electronics, IT business process management, automotive, aerospace, and copper. Foreign direct investments have been an essential driver to the Philippine economy, and now they are even more instrumental in helping our country recover from the recession brought about by the pandemic. It is therefore with great pride that we are to present what is in store for our esteemed guests and stakeholders today. Without further ado, let's begin the program. As the Undersecretary of the Industry Development and Trade Policy Group of the DTI, he leads the crafting and implementation of the Philippine Industrial Policy and International Trade Negotiation Agenda, as well as the Philippine government's bilateral trade and investment engagements with key partner economies. Among his notable accomplishments are the successful negotiation of the Philippine-European Free Trade Association Free Trade Agreement and the only signed bilateral FTA of the country other than that with Japan, and the Philippines' application to EU GSP Plus program. As the managing head of the Board of Investments, he has set record-breaking investment approvals in the country the last 3 years. Let's all welcome the Undersecretary of the Department of Trade and Industry and Managing Head of the Board of Investments, Dr. Seferino Peri Rodolfo, for his welcome remarks.
Officials, private sector and industry association representatives, members of the DTI Executive Committee, and the BOI Board and Management Committee, colleagues in government, including most especially representatives from the country's investment promotion agencies, campaign partners, and guests. To everyone in this on-site venue and to those who are with us, albeit virtually via Zoom and Facebook live stream, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever in this world you may be. I would like to thank everyone for your presence in today's official launch of the Philippines' new International Investment Promotion Campaign. We take your presence today as your sincerest gesture of full support the official launch of the Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign, the new International Investments Promo campaign initiated by the BOI and working closely with the network of investment promotion agencies and with the valuable assistance of the UK government, our development partner for this project. In our many years of working together to further strengthen the competitiveness of our local industries, we all know that alongside implementing an integrated approach to industry development through interventions and support in the area of policy, research and development, human resources capacity building, and ease of doing business, an intensive promotion of investments in our local industries is likewise equally important. Industry development and aggressive investment promo always go together. We have worked collectively in mounting promotion events for our various industries conducted here and overseas. However, this unified countrywide promotional campaign we are launching is more focused and specific. Through a series of consultation meetings with various stakeholders, the campaign initially promotes 5 key priority sectors that are seen to have most potential for foreign investment, even in the medium to long term in a post-pandemic recovery scenario, such as automotive, aerospace, electronics, IT/BPM, and copper and nickel products. The new investment promotion strategy aims to address the value chain gaps and further the growth and competitiveness of our local industries, strengthen the country's position as an investment destination of choice in the Southeast Asian region. Fast forward to months of hard work. Amidst the challenges of the current health crisis, we are ready to launch and roll out the new investment promotion campaign. As the brand Make It Happen in the Philippines exudes the Filipino trait of resilience amidst challenges, it is part of the Philippine government's efforts to rebuild the economy during and post-COVID-19 crisis. In a rapidly developing world beset by numerous adversities such as the COVID-19 pandemic and Mother Nature unfolding its fury, the Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign stresses the importance of the country's resiliency and adaptability to overcome adversities and emerge even better and stronger. To recall, a roll up your sleeves, make it work mindset has allowed the Philippines to sail through the 2008 global financial crisis and the devastating natural disasters that have battered the country over the past 2 decades, such as typhoons Ketsana and Haiyan, and now Goni and Vamco. In spite of this, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and other international institutions project the country's economic fundamentals as strong or as among the strongest and most stable in Southeast Asia. With our strategic location at the heart of Southeast Asia, the development of more IT parks and economic zones, the flagship Build infrastructure program in full swing, and you get a great investment destination that assures you of sustained growth and ease of doing business. Our labor force stands at 49 million, and we produce 750,000 graduates annually, with wage rates that are among the most stable in the region. The Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign highlights some of the best performing sectors in the country. The BOI, for one, we remain optimistic of reaching our 1 trillion target in project approvals for 2020, as total approved investments from January to October of this year already hit 826 billion pesos. Though this will be slightly lower than the project approvals for 2019, we are still on course for the second highest level of project approvals in our agency's history despite this pandemic. Truly, the Philippines provides superior investment and business facilitation services, with BOI coordinating closely with other investment promo agencies. We are dedicating focal teams, including from the private sector, that will help make your business goals happen when you invest and operate in the Philippines. Again, on behalf of the BOI and the Philippines' closely knit network of investment promotion agencies, thank you all for being here. Invest in the Philippines, make it happen in the Philippines. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
The audience the journey of the new international investment campaign. And because this is indeed a very special day, our distinguished speaker has also extended his well wishes, even though he won't be able to join us today. Without further ado, let's hear the message of the President of the Republic of the Philippines, His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
I am one with the Department of Trade and Industry in launching the Make It Happen in the Philippines initiative that will encourage foreign investors to choose our country as the next investment destination. As we revive our economy amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, I remain confident in the capacity of our industries to provide investors with an ideal and strategic advantage in doing their businesses here in the Philippines. As we move towards recovery, I urge everyone to remain steadfast in responding to the challenges and embracing the new opportunities for our workforce and our economy. Together, let us usher in a stronger and more progressive future for all. I wish you the best in your endeavors.
Thank you, of course, Mr. President, and we thank him and the Office of the President for sharing that message. Now give the spotlight to the man of the hour. His extensive government experience with the Presidential Management Staff, DTI, and the National Economic Development Authority in the early part of his career provided him with a solid background on macroeconomic and industry development that allowed him to adopt a more holistic trade approach when he moved to the private sector and became top executive of a major Philippine food and beverage company for over 23 years. As a strong advocate for entrepreneurship education for 12 years, he was called to serve the country once again under the Duterte administration as the DTI Secretary and chairs several institutions under DTI. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all give a warm round of applause to the Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry, Secretary Ramon Lopez, for his keynote message.
And good afternoon, everyone, and good evening and good morning to our friends outside the country. First of all, I'd like to just give special mention and thanks to all of you who are here. It's really great seeing all of you. I guess this is a good sign that we are slowly, gradually going back to the new normal with your physical presence. And how about a big hand for all of you here? This is a good sign of really getting back to the new normal and sign of confidence, no, that we are slowly recovering. Special acknowledgement, of course, to our colleague in government, Secretary Raul Lambino of CESA. Thank you for coming over, for joining us. Yusek Epimaco Densing of DILG, who chose to attend this event over another activity. Undersecretary Marvin Gatpayat of the PCOO. Engineer Marisa Mandokdok of the Clark Development Corporation. Mr. Francis Initorio of the MSFTZ Mount Samat. Attorney Ishak Mastura, the Chairman and Managing Head of the Regional BOI of BARM. Salamat po for joining us. And of course, from our DTI family, again, hello to the BOI and the DTI family. BOI headed here by Undersecretary and BOI Managing Director, Seferino Rodolfo. Our friends from the British Embassy who has helped us in preparing for this campaign, Make It Happen, Mr. Richard Coley, And of course, our regards to Ambassador Daniel Cruz from the private sector who will be joining us and giving their testimonials. Advance thank you to Elmar Luther of the Lufthansa Technik. Good to see you again, sir, and Mr. John Lee of the Aerospace Industries Association of the Philippines, and of course, a stalwart in the industry, Mr. Vicente Mills Jr. Maraming salamat po for joining us in this activity. The country's new investment promotion brand, Make It Happen in the Philippines, is more than just a brand or a tagline. It speaks of who we are as Filipinos and as a government. It highlights our genuine Filipino trait of resilience and make it work mindset that exudes strength and adaptability even in times of adversity. The success of our repurposing manufacturing program is a testament to this mindset. It demonstrates the agility of Philippine industries to adapt to changing business environments anchored on the country's growing industrial baselines and ability to leverage a broader ecosystem of inter and intra-industry partnerships. From a production capacity of 6 million pieces of surgical masks, we are now able to produce 60 million medical-grade face masks. And from a zero production capacity, we are now able to produce 3.2 million pieces of medical-grade coveralls per month. This shows that together, we made it happen. Make it happen in the Philippines is also a promise to Filipinos and anyone doing or who wants to do business in the Philippines that we will build back better. That is why we set out to implement Rebuild, our initiative which stands for revitalizing businesses, investments, livelihood, and domestic demand. This is our economic recovery plan amidst the pandemic and is anchored on a vision to create a modern, dynamic, and responsible Philippines. It is aimed at jumpstarting and reinvigorating the Philippine economy by revitalizing consumption and enhancing production capacity. The two broad strategies of Rebuild are to revitalize demand and to empower local industries to capture the demand in the agriculture, industry, and services. On the demand side, it starts with government support via economic stimulus to keep jobs. This is important to attract more production activities and create a better business environment for investments. On the supply side, we should enhance production capacities in agriculture, industry, and services sector to help build our export competitiveness and manage imports. This creates a dynamic cycle of sustained and growing economic activity with strong domestic linkages. Hence, the infusion of more FDIs or foreign direct investments plays a dual critical role in our country's economic development. It addresses the supply chain gaps in production, and it also provides for the physical and digital infrastructure to enable the modernization of Philippine industries. Rebuilding the robust growth of Philippines will start from the strategies outlined under the Rebuild initiative. This will hinge on key drivers that have enabled the Philippine economy to thrive in previous years. With a stable and large domestic market of 110 million people, our population is expected to grow by 16.8% from 2017 to 2026. We are in a demographic sweet spot, with the average age of Filipinos being 24 years old, which means significant latent demand for goods and services in the country. The Philippines also has preferential access in major markets through our free trade or preferential trade arrangements with ASEAN, with Japan, with Korea, China, India, Australia, New Zealand, the EU, EFTA, that's the EU FTA, Russia, US, and Canada. The recent conclusion of the Regional Mega Free Trade Agreement, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, is further expected to strengthen the Philippine advantage. This agreement signals a renewed vow in a rules-based system for trade and investments in the region, and with our key trade partners, that is Australia, China, Japan, Korea, and New Zealand. It covers not only the usual areas of trade in goods and services, but investments and economic cooperation, but also emerging trade areas such as intellectual property, electronic or e-commerce, government procurement, and competition. Moreover, the country has been a reliable manufacturing base for export-oriented industries. The Philippines has veered away from the imposition of export restrictions, even for critical medical products during this pandemic. Instead, we capacitate manufacturing firms to enable them to support both domestic and foreign demand. As a testament of our Make It Happen brand, we have a large pool of skilled, trainable, and cost-efficient workforce, as mentioned by Yusek Perry earlier, who are also competent, hardworking, and loyal. Among the ASEAN member states, the Philippines produce among the highest number of tertiary graduates, about 750,000 a year, most of which are into engineering, IT-related fields, medicine, and health-related fields, and agri-forestry. Prior to the pandemic, the Philippines had very good, strong economic fundamentals. We were growing, if you remember, at an average of 6.6% over the period of 2016 to 2019. The Philippines was also the third fastest growing economy in Asia. In 2019, our per capita GDP stood at $3,400 to $3,500, and we were projecting to breach the $4,000 mark to become an upper middle income by 2020 if COVID-19 did not happen. Our astute monetary policy enabled us to have low and stable inflation rates, averaging at 2.5% for 2019, and last year we had strong fiscal position whereby we achieved the highest revenues and lowest debt as shares of GDP. We also had among our lowest unemployment and underemployment rates in 2019, about 5% for unemployment. And we even received the highest ever credit ratings in the range of BBB plus and A minus from credit rating agencies. Because of COVID-19, lives were lost. The health of many of our people suffered, livelihoods were affected, and the dreams of many were put on hold. We owe it to our people, every Filipino and every investor who has put their trust and faith in the Philippines to rebuild a better economy. We will make it happen. The Philippines is working on a V-shaped economic recovery. We expect to sustain this towards the end of the year and look forward to a stronger recovery in 2021. Moody's recently recalibrated our GDP forecast for our country to a robust 7.8% growth for 2021 instead of the original 5.2% projection. The UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, also expects Philippine exports to decline at a slower rate, that's 8.7% in the third quarter of the year, easing from the double-digit contraction in April to June period. Our export performance in September is already better than last year, 2% growth, driven by increase in export of copper and other mineral products, chemicals, and electronic products. Take note, it's a positive 2%, no longer a decline. The country is also lining up the production of 10 new vehicle models even in the midst of the pandemic. In DTI, we recorded a 12% increase in the number of business names registered for the first 8 months of the year compared to the full year of 2019. This is a clear indication of the adaptability, of Filipinos in challenging times. In fact, if you look at the online registration of online businesses, it went up from 1,700 for January to March of this year to 87,000 for April to October of this year. The investment approvals registered by Philippine BOI is on track to hit 1 trillion pesos for the year, as mentioned also by Yusek Perry, the second highest mark in the agency's history. For the first 3 quarters of 2020, investment approvals already reached over $15 billion. Our PEZA, Philippine Economic Zone Authority, has also registered a 43% increase in investments in our export-oriented IT-BPM industry. There are 90 notable investment leads with high probability of completion, valued at $24.1 billion, to generate 134,000 jobs. There are also 73 more target investment leads that DTI will invite directly, coming from the US, Malaysia, Japan, China, Taiwan, Europe, and Japan. We would also like to point out that the Philippines has risen in the Global Innovation Index, GII, 2020 to 50th out of 131 countries from 54th in 2019. This is the first time that the Philippines has reached the top 50. Moreover, the GII recognizes the country as an innovation achiever for the second year in a row. From 2014, we were just in the 100s, and now we are in the 50th rank. We think our next target for 43rd rank is achievable, and we are committed to achieve this goal. Just recently, our country just got a much-needed boost as we rank among the safest economies in the world. The Philippines placed 12th among the 50 countries based on the highly respected Gallup's 2020 Global Law and Order report. It's worth noting that we are in the same level as Australia and New Zealand. As such, foreign investors would surely take notice of this development and take advantage of potential opportunities in the country. We look forward to the virus being contained, along with our fiscal support reawakening to revitalize and bolster our economy. As we promote our country in the face of the expected global recovery, we can tap the emerging opportunities and challenges from shifting trade and investment preferences and changing forms of national production. This will be made possible as we continue to fast-track our industrial strategies with skilling and upskilling of our workforce, along with adopting new technologies. With a more resilient and inclusive and sustainable effort, we are gearing up for a dramatic recovery next year. Our ultimate goal is that with your support, our country's economic growth story will continue even better in a post-COVID-19 future. Through the jobs and employment generated by business and investment, our country can gain a better and more comfortable quality of life, as promised by our President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte. We are confident that the launch of the Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign will relay a clear message across to the rest of the world that the Philippines is dynamic, agile, and resilient. Now, more than ever, we are ready to roll up our sleeves and make things happen for you. Thank you, and let's make it happen in the Philippines.
Carlos P. Romulo, please turn your attention to the screen for the special message of the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr.
His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez, Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, Honorable Cabinet officials, His Excellency Ambassador Daniel Cruz of the United Kingdom Trade Commissioner Natalie Black, members of the Board of Investments and colleagues in government, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to compliment President Duterte's leadership and the economic team for their praiseworthy efforts in handling the country's economy in this pandemic. While the global outlook remains bleak as COVID-19 causes fresh lockdowns elsewhere abroad, the Philippine government's cautious reopening to allow for economic activity while safeguarding the health of our citizenry is providing a more hopeful scenario for our country. As policies for addressing the national economic interests return to the fore, there should be no let-up in enforcing the new normal health protocols and hygiene standards in this pandemic. The Philippine Foreign Service continues to bring back home Filipinos affected by this crisis. Our embassies and consulates general are complying with physical distancing, mobility restrictions, area lockdowns, and other health protocols imposed by host governments, have been maximizing the use of digital technologies and social media platforms to promote Philippine trade, invite foreign investments, and draw future foreign tourists to our lovely country. I thank Secretary Lopez for inviting us to support the Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign. I enjoin our diplomats to take to heart the thrust of this campaign that underscores the Filipino spirit in adversity. We are not backing down. We are even now going forward to recovery. I take the opportunity to invite our international business and investment partners to join us in building better out of this pandemic for our mutual benefit. As I come to the end of my message, I convey the appreciation of the Philippine government to the government of the United Kingdom, whose partnership with DTI and the Board of Investments is making this happen. To Ambassador Cruz, please communicate this message to Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. The Philippines looks forward to realizing with the United Kingdom and the rest of the international community a future that is better prepared and resilient through stronger cooperative relationships. Thank you. This is happening now.
This initiative. This campaign's successful launch today will not be possible without the support of the private sector. Let's now hear their sharing of experiences in doing business in the Philippines and how they made it happen here. First of all, we are honored to be joined by the President and CEO of Lufthansa Technik Philippines, Mr. Elmer Luder. Mr. Luder has a solid 30 years of experience in the aviation industry, starting as an avionics engineer in Lufthansa, then as CEO of Lufthansa Technik Budapest, then in Puerto Rico. His exemplary leadership was recognized with the Outstanding Leadership in Asia Award in the ACES Awards in 2019. Without further ado, let me invite Mr. Elmer Luder here on stage to talk about how the Filipino workforce has actually driven Lufthansa's MRO operations here in the Philippines. A round warm of applause, please.
Mon, Secretary Lambino, all secretaries, directors, officials of the DTI and BOI families, distinguished guests from government and from the private sector. I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me here. It is a great honor to give testimony about our experience in the Philippines. I would like to congratulate you for hosting this event. I was a little bit surprised that it would be happening in presence, as we are all used so much to video conferencing and online meetings now. But I think it's a sign of hope and resilience. And it's also the same for our flying community, we really appreciate nowadays to go back to flying again and prove that it is safe and we can live with the new protocols. And once we get into more efficient testing and even a vaccine, I'm sure our industry and our society will recover. Now let me thank you for including the aerospace industry as one of the six priority industries here featured in this campaign launch. I'm absolutely deeply convinced that the aerospace industry offers a bright future, great opportunities for every country which seizes those opportunities. The aerospace industry, of course, serves a very basic need for people to connect and offers so many advantages for the economic development of any country that indeed many countries are trying to advance their aerospace industry and give opportunities to their engineers and technicians. We are doing that here in the Philippines with our Lufthansa Technik Philippines joint venture, which offers jobs to over 3,000 Filipinos. And those Filipinos are mostly college educated and repair aircraft now, which really requires a lot of experience and skills. So that's why, of course, also retention is always in our focus. But I come to that a little bit later. Let me briefly explain why we are here. Now, our joint venture was formed in the late 90s, and we were looking for a place where we can repair aircraft, overhaul aircraft for the global market. So for Lufthansa, but also for all other airlines worldwide, because it's indeed a global market, and that's characteristic for our industry. Aircraft and parts can go anywhere where the conditions are right. And there are a few obvious reasons why we chose the Philippines, but perhaps also something not so obvious. Obvious is that the Philippines are home to Asia's oldest airline, Philippine Airlines. And coming with that is a deep manpower pool and training infrastructure, which makes sure that any aerospace venture can flourish here. Because it's a labor-intensive business, and you can start it actually from scratch on a green field, but you will find out that the training and the learning curve until the experience is really sufficient will eat up quite some resources. So that's why we were not starting from nothing here, but we were building on a tradition already, on a very good foundation of aviation and maintenance for aircraft. That was obvious. What was perhaps also obvious was the government's effort to attract foreign investors by a one-stop shop model. I think that's a really attractive proposition where investors who are not familiar with the country, and we were clearly not familiar with the country, and we could hardly distinguish between the Philippines and Indonesia, actually are alleviated of a burden to talk to so many different people about so many different things. And it gave us and many other investors the certainty and the guidance and the predictability which we needed. And there's, of course, the Philippine workforce, which speaks English very well, which is hardworking, which is trainable, which is also very important in our business. And that was already at that point renowned in the world. What was perhaps not so obvious, and I wasn't part of this particular site selection in the 90s, but I have run some international site selections before I came here. And I would say sometimes overlooked is the fact of a red carpet treatment. Of course, the site selection is about big spreadsheets, about hundreds of different parameters, which all get rated. And at the end of the day, every team will find out no country is 100%. Problems are different, but no country has the absolutely perfect proposition for everything. And those spreadsheets only go so far, and it involves a lot of human judgment. And humans are doing those site selections, and humans will be convinced or not. And here, all governments can actually tilt the game in their favor if they assure their potential investors that actually the government really supports them and really wants them. And that costs nothing in the first place. We have been part of that treatment here in the 90s, where President Ramos had to do certain decisions, which was somehow very impressive also to the team, how much committed the Philippines were. And this treatment, I think I can state that in the last 20 years, we have never missed the preferential treatment which DTI seems to extend to all investors. And the whole government, not only DTI's, willingness to support their export industries, their key industries, the foreign investors, and help them navigate the scene. And that's something which sometimes really doesn't cost money. It's a matter of commitment and attitude. And I think this campaign is part of that. And of course also our frequent discussions. And I really appreciate DTI's open ear anytime to anything. That's why we have decided recently also to invest more. Amidst all the uncertainty, of course, now very obvious with the pandemic, but also with government policies, we trust the Philippines. All we have seen are reliable partners who stand for their word, who know that we have to make long-term decisions which are adversely affected if trust erodes. And sudden changes in the course can scare investors like us who have to think in 20 years terms or longer. So I think that summarizes our experience here. Once again, let me congratulate you, Secretary Mon, and the whole community for your relentless effort to showcase the Philippines, I think it has deserved its success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peter, for joining us here today. Our next speaker is the chairman of Medtex International Limited, Mr. Clement Young, founded the Medtex Group. It's a well-known multinational healthcare services provider of personal protective equipment and medical products and services, which has established a presence in the Philippines since 1989. He helped the group grow in the country and continuously contributing to the Philippine economy. He's also the chairman of the newly established Confederation of the Philippine Manufacturers of PPE. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now hear how Mr. Clement Young and his company managed to double its production here in the Philippines despite the height of the pandemic and lockdown to meet the growing global demand for surgical masks.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is such an honor to have been invited and to be part of this promotion campaign of the Department of Trade and Industry, Board of Investment, DTI BOI. But before I proceed with my speech, allow me to extend a very warm magandang hapon to all of the distinguished guests here. His Excellency President Duterte, honorable gentlemen from the DTI, Secretary Ramon Lopez, and Undersecretary Rodolfo, Foreign Affairs Secretary Loxin Jr., and the rest of the notable ladies and gentlemen from both the government and private sectors. Medtex is a well-known healthcare products and service provider and a leading manufacturer of medical consumables. We commenced operations in the Philippines in 1989 and have since established a strong presence in the United States, Europe, and the Asia Pacific. Our vision is providing world-class medical products, services, protective wear to ensure that every workers return home safe. As an original product manufacturer, OPM, of a wide range of medical consumables like face masks, bandages, and other PPE products are sold in almost all medical supplies stores and the hospital services, which has expanded and is now servicing 32 hospitals in the Philippines. It is continuous production of personal protective equipment, PPEs, helps curb the number in the fight against the coronavirus here and abroad. The Philippines is the greatest treasure for every investor. The government offers numerous incentives to investors in different locations. For example, we are located inside AFA, a free trade port. We are currently enjoying the following incentives: 4 to 8 years income tax holiday, special tax rate of 5% on gross income earned, tax duty-free on materials and capital equipment inputs, exemption on war fetch and export tax duty, imposts and fees, employment of foreign nations. Therefore, you can see that Our company has been set up in Philippines for over 30 years. Our sales start from 2 to 3 million US dollars in the very beginning up to 50 million US dollars today. There are so many factors for investors to be successful in the Philippines, but two of the key factors of success I can share with you. They are the abundance of excellent Philippine workers and the smooth labor cost increased for the past 30 years. From my observation, there's no other countries in Asia like Philippines for investment. Year 2020 has shown the resilience of Filipinos, beginning from the eruption of the volcano in January, the start of COVID-19 pandemic in the first quarter and up to now, and the various typhoons hit this country. Together with the government, the people of Philippines were able to overcome all these difficulties safely. Overall, the Philippines is a paradise for me to everybody. With sufficient workforce, stable cost of wages, various incentives, Metex is an obvious example. To all investors, you can make it too. Make a move. Make it happen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yang, for that insightful message. And last but not least, let's hear from the Director for Government Relations and Public Affairs of Texas Instrument, Mr. Ralph Morales. Concurrently, Mr. Morales is the President of the American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, North Luzon. He also sits in the Board of Semiconductor and Electronics Industries of the Philippines as chairperson of its North Luzon chapter. And prior to joining TI, Ralph began his career in various international and local nonprofit advocacy, such as the International Justice Mission, or IJM, and Ayala Foundation, as well as positions in government and civil society organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now hear from Mr. Ralph Morales on why Texas Instruments has chosen the Philippines as an investment destination and the factors that made them continue the expansion.
Texas Instruments innovations are around you in things you see every day. We help more than 100,000 customers around the globe to create differentiated applications in markets that include industrial, automotive, personal electronics, communications equipment, and enterprise systems. The Philippines has been a home to TI for over 40 years now, and the manufacturing sites in Baguio and in Clark play a very important role in creating a better world by making electronics more affordable through semiconductors. TI remains to be the Philippines' top exporter and one of the largest foreign investors in the country. Why the Philippines? Number one, we continue to see a steady stream of Filipino talent ready to take on the challenging and fast pace of work in TI. The Filipino workforce are problem solvers who shape the future of electronics, operates with passion, and thrives in the TI culture that is trustworthy, inclusive, innovative, competitive, and results-oriented. A business landscape with a comprehensive support from its host country is critical for TI and partners in government, such as the Department of Trade and Industry, the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, and the Board of Investments. These enable us to maintain operations to meet critical global demands when we face the challenges of natural disasters and now the COVID-19 pandemic. TI is committed to work diligently to continue to support our customers and minimize disruptions while ensuring the health and safety of our workers. The network of third-party logistics providers available in the Philippines are comparable to what is offered in other major economic centers in Asia and the rest of the world. And easy access to the global network plays a crucial role in TI's capability to fulfill orders and ship to our customers around the globe. In summary, Texas Instruments applaud the brand of service of the Department of Trade and Industry, PEZA, and BOI, not only in attracting more investors to the country, but also in their effort to further improve the business landscape. The clarity in regulatory environment and policies relevant to the business sector is vital. By serving as a bridge with other government agencies in ensuring ease of doing business, our government partners effectively represent the businesses so we can all land in a win-win middle ground. Through the effort of our government partners, we look forward to seeing a flourishing Philippine business landscape that generates jobs for Filipinos and export revenues and an overall development of the local industries. Make it happen in the Philippines.
Our next distinguished guest was appointed as the British Ambassador to the Philippines in August of 2017. Just recently, the UK government has partnered with the Philippine Board of Investments to develop a new Philippine investment promotion brand. Taking note of the extensive experience of British Ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency's previous professions include former Deputy Head of Mission at the British Embassy in Madrid from 2012 to 2016, and in the British Embassy in Bangkok from 2008 to 2012. And previously worked in the Europe Directorate of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in London, heading the department that dealt with the internal EU issues, including economic reform and the EU's institutions, and responsible for strategic communication on the EU, including the Lisbon Treaty. We are deeply honored to have with us today to impart his message of support, His Majesty's Ambassador Daniel Pruis, British Ambassador to the Philippines.
So I'm delighted to be able to join you all today, albeit virtually, at the launch of the Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign. This is a project which the British government has worked closely with our partners in the Philippines on for many months now, and I know that Secretary Lopez and Yusek Rodolfo have been actively involved since its very first inception. I'm confident that today marks a new journey which will reap enormous benefits for the Philippines. The British government was able to support this project under the Department for International Trade's Investment Promotion Program, the IPP, and this is the first ODA Prosperity Fund program for the department anywhere in the world. So I'm delighted that the Philippines was chosen as the first country to benefit from this investment support to help drive sustainable economic development. The program has been underway in the Philippines since 2019 and has phased in fully over the course of this year. We're working across 3 pillars of activity to support communications, investment analysis, and PPP project development. For this particular pillar, we brought in our own in-house experts from the Government Communications Service, and they shared their knowledge and experience in creating national brands. So this launch of the Philippines' first sustained multi-sector and multi-market brand is designed to drive FDI inflows. It underlines the significance of international partnership and cooperation in helping economies grow and people to thrive. Of course, the Philippines is an increasingly important economic partner for the UK. Last year we saw over £2 billion in bilateral trade, and there are a very significant number of British companies already here in the Philippines, and I'm grateful that a number of them have been able to join us today. The government of the Philippines is also making enormous strides in ensuring that the business environment is as welcoming as possible. And the Philippines deservedly jumped 29 places in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business rankings last year. In relation to that, the British Prosperity Fund has been working with ATA to share our experience of cutting red tape. And next year marks the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the United Kingdom and the Philippines, 3/4 of a century in which we have built a strong international partnership, and we very much look forward to that partnership continuing to go from strength to strength in the years ahead. We now see over 200,000 British tourists here in the Philippines over the past year in 2019, and there are around 20,000 Brits who have chosen to live in the Philippines, settle and make their lives here. We're blessed in the UK with over 200,000 Filipinos living and working there and making an enormous contribution to our country. And in particular, we have over 20,000 Filipino healthcare professionals working in our National Health Service, absolutely on the front line of our response to the coronavirus pandemic, and bringing enormous levels of professional skill and expertise and fantastic empathy and human qualities to the patients that they deal with. We're very committed to supporting the continued development of the Philippines, particularly around an inclusive and sustainable program of growth, and we're using the UK Prosperity Fund to help deliver that, looking at sectors such as health, education, low carbon energy, infrastructure development, business and economic reform. These are objectives that both our countries share and where we've already been able to work together very, very successfully. So I'll just conclude by reflecting that we see at this time more than ever the importance of international partnership and cooperation as we all strive to find our way forwards in the new normal. I'm particularly pleased to be able to celebrate with you today the results of this new partnership, and I wish every success to our friends, colleagues and partners in the Philippines as they take forward this marvelous campaign. With that, thank you very much. Maraming salamat.
Message. And it is a great pleasure to introduce our last distinguished speaker, who is a member of Parliament of Gloucester and appointed as Parliamentary Private Secretary to Lord Howell of Guildford and Hugo Swire in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. His broad experience include Chairman of the All-Party Parliamentary Groups for Indonesia, China, and the Commonwealth, FCO in Kenya, and British Trade Commissioner in China, and founder of the chairman of the British Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. In 2012, he was appointed as a Prime Minister Trade Envoy to Indonesia and to the ASEAN Economic Community in 2015. Lastly, he's also Trade Envoy to Malaysia and the Philippines. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Richard Graham, British Prime Minister's Trade Envoy to the Philippines.
Magandang hapon sa inyo lahat sa Filipinas. And it is fantastic to see the Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign underway. Mabuhay sa Make It Happen in the Philippines. I am really sorry to you all, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary, and all the distinguished people on this great video, that I'm not there with you personally in the Philippines. My last call as the Prime Minister's Trade Envoy to much of Southeast Asia was in Manila, and I remember well discussing with Secretary Mon Lopez and his colleague Usek Rodolfo the ways in which this campaign could be brought alive, and I'm delighted that the Department of International Trade's Investment Promotion Program is part of this cooperation with the DTI in the Philippines. We've got the DIT, you have the DTI, very similar. And our goals, our shared goals as nations that believe in free trade and open investment are very similar. And it was terrific that my last meeting in London before lockdown was in fact with a visitor from the Philippines, with Mayor Isko Moreno. Mayor Isko had come to look at various things, including smart cities here in London, but in fact we changed his program with him in order that he could have some really good discussions on how to handle the challenges of the pandemic. COVID-19, a similar challenge in the Philippines as here in the UK. And right now, of course, we're all wrestling with the exit strategy, which is to do with the vaccine. We know that there's good news that's come out of America and Germany with the Pfizer developments, and we know also that the AstraZeneca and University of Oxford developments are coming closely down the track as well. Some 150 vaccines have been in development around the world, but I suspect there will be a handful that will be ready and available very soon. And I hope that the AstraZeneca one, which will be a great deal cheaper than the Pfizer one and easier to distribute, is one that the Philippines will also be able to get access to. Now, for today's program on Make It Happen in the Philippines, of course, we all know the great things that attract investment to your country. The booming economy, the access to regional markets, the plethora of young and skilled talent, and all sorts of other regional importance that you've taken advantage of, whether it's in creating back offices, regional headquarters, looking at whether companies elsewhere want to relocate to the attractions of the Philippines, all sorts of things that you've got going for you. And we will try and promote those here to businesses as soon as they can travel again and come and visit you and look at ways of investing in the Philippines, because this is good for us just as it's good for you. And the same is true the other way around. Of course, we know that some of the great Philippines investments here, whether the Ayala investment in high tech or in the investment by the Tan family in White & Mackay's whiskey in Glasgow, these have been successes in different sectors and strongly supported both by our excellent team in the embassy in Manila that Ambassador Danny Pruce heads up, or by the DIT here in the UK. And me, as the representative of the Prime Minister, I stand ready to help any Philippines investment in the UK. So I think as we move forward and we get through this nightmare business of dealing with the pandemic, I very much hope that Make It Happen in the Philippines will start with making the doors open to our two countries so that people can fly in and out and have the meetings and meet the contacts that we both need, because good trade and good investment are based on relationships. That's always something the Philippines has understood. You've had fantastic relationships for years and years with so many of our businesses, and I want to see more of that happen, and will play my part too. So, maraming salamat to everybody who's put this virtual conference together. My thanks to my colleagues in the embassy, to Secretary Mon Lopez and all his team, and let's make it happen.
Thank you to Mr. Graham for your message. And we finally come to the highlight of today's event, the official launch of the Philippines' new international investment promotion campaign, Make It Happen in the Philippines. Today's launch will mark the beginning of a wonderful initiative that will surely help to jumpstart the Philippine economy despite the challenges we had this year in the time of the pandemic. An exciting effort that we should all be looking forward to. We are just getting started, so we're very hopeful that with your support, we can do this in the coming days, months, and years. Ladies and gentlemen, please focus your attention to the screens as we proudly present you the Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign video.
2020 has been a challenging year for the world, but one country has already started its recovery: the Philippines. In response to COVID, production of PPE immediately accelerated to 60 million pieces a month, exemplifying our Make It Happen mindset. Business registrations are already 12% up on 2019. Approved investment in the first 9 months of 2020 has been remarkable. And the economy is set to grow strongly in 2021. Annual exports from our aerospace industry are very healthy. Our automotive exports are even better. Annual revenues in IT and business outsourcing are higher than ever. Likewise in our electronics sector. So what's behind this amazing bounce back? In a word, it's our people. A highly skilled and motivated workforce welcomes investors from the world over. And thousands of colleges and universities are adding to it every year. They're ready to rise to whatever challenges the future throws at us. Make it happen in the Philippines.
Make It Happen in the Philippines is more than just a brand or a tagline for the country's investment promotion. It perfectly describes what we are and, of course, what we aim for, our make it happen mindset, our strength and adaptability in these trying times. And as mentioned by our speakers today, the government and the private sector, armed with the full support of development partners such as the UK government, are working tirelessly towards the country's economic recovery. With a young, educated, and tech-savvy population in the Philippines, and with our superior investment and business facilitation services, we are all looking forward to the developments on the priority sectors identified to attract foreign investment: electronics, information technology, business process management, automotive, aerospace, and copper nickel. Once again, we'd like to say congratulations to the whole team behind Make It Happen in the Philippines campaign. This is really a remarkable milestone for the country. And that concludes, finally, our program today. We thank you all for gracing us with your presence. I'm Pinky Webb, inviting all investors all over the world, make it happen in the Philippines. Enjoy the rest of the day.